Hello and welcome to the Auction Advocate, the podcast where we are all in. My name is Taven, Communications Coordinator here at National Auction Association. Today I am joined by our 2024-2025 NAA President John Schultz, AMM, and Vice President Morgan Hopson, CAI. Everyone, absolute pleasure. How are we doing today?
Doing great.
Doing great.
Thanks for having us, Taven.
So football season is upon us, and I have with me today a Minnesota Golden Gopher and a TCU Horned Frog.
Go Frogs.
Ski-U-Ma, John.
That's right, Ski-U-Ma. That is exactly correct.
And Riff Ram Bazoo, Morgan.
Lickety, lickety, zoo.
I didn't know the rest of that. Thank you for sharing that.
I could say the rest, but-
Lickety, lickety, zoo.
Riff, ram, bazoo, lickety, lickety, zoo, wah, wahoo, give them hell, TCU.
And since you
learned
two,
something new today.
Since you two are going to be working together to progress the auction industry standards forward, I figured I should bring up the fact that in the 3 times ever that Minnesota and TCU have played each other in football, TCU is leading the series 2-1. And Minnesota hasn't won since 1974. John, you couldn't even enjoy that 9-7 victory because you were -3 years old.
I was -3 in 1974. You should have looked up national championships by colleges. I think that would have come out in my favor.
No, I preferred what I looked up.
Same.
All right, so I don't actually have a question or anything regarding any of that, but figured you would both love to know that TCU is leading that charge.
I do appreciate that.
It fascinated me. What also fascinates me is learning what drives someone to join the board of directors for the NAA. What was the driving force for you to become a director? John, I'll start with you.
My driving force starts way back when. 1992, my grandfather passed away, and many of you heard this story. And the auction community came around us, and we had an auction. My aunt and uncle were in the auction business, have been since 1978. And auctioneers from across the state came together and supported our family. And that kind of started to light a little bit of a fire there. But as I progressed through my career, I went to work for my aunt and uncle in their auction business. And I started realizing that serving as a director would allow me to contribute my skills and experience and passion to help shape the future of the industry. And I saw it as an opportunity, right, to how can I promote the auction method of marketing and advocate and work towards leaving a legacy that would outlive myself for future generations of auctioneers. And so that it all started way back then, right, in 1992 with an auction for my grandfather, right? We eventually then sell when my grandmother moved off the farm, we sold what was left on the farm and then sold the real estate at auction. And that was really the impetus behind that.
Morgan, how about you?
For me, just a little bit different than John, just that I don't come from an auction family. I'm first generation auctioneer. And so I think I went to auction school initially, not necessarily to become an auctioneer. I was just really trying to learn the business. And I work for a good family friend of ours and just blessed to be able to work with him every day. The reason I really went to auction school was to learn the business side of things, to help him in the office and to do marketing. And I think when I got there, I realized how supportive the auction community was initially. And I think like John, I'm sure everyone's heard me say this, but I grew up in a family that was really passionate about the associations that they were involved in. And so for me, I always knew that I was going to join the association. So when they handed out the papers, hey, sign up for National Auctioneers Association, National Auction Association now, but I was like, absolutely, I'm going to do this. But then as I started going to things and getting more involved in the association, I knew that it was something more than association, that it was going to be a community that was going to challenge me to grow both personally and professionally. And again, I think my parents really instilled this in me from like a young age, that the power of service and service above self. And as I became more involved, I had a community around me. And I think the auction industry, and I feel like John would agree, that is so special in that people really wrap their arms around you and it really does become a family. And so as I continue to get involved in the association, I just saw serving as a director as a way to continue to our continued success and growth of our industry. And so being able to be on the board as a director and now VP and lead initiatives and champion causes that really matter to us, matter to our members, being able to work alongside dedicated professionals in our industry that are have brilliant minds and ideas was really something that for me allowed me to go from serving as director to also want to continue to serve as VP.
So we have people go through all the time that want to serve as director and then don't take that next step to serve as VP or any other thing. But you both loved your time serving as director enough that it led you both to the next step of running for VP. You both saw room for extended growth and you each wanted to be a part of that. What makes today such a pivotal moment in the auction industry, and how will you approach the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead? Morgan, I can start with you there.
I think really today is such a pivotal moment in the auction industry, mainly because we're navigating an era of like very significant change when it comes to technology and innovation. We're in an era where technology changes on a dime, right? It can do a 180 overnight and we don't know what to expect. So I think as we look at the NAA, these challenges and these opportunities that come, I think really we have to stay rooted in our strategic vision, but also we have to be adaptable to change. And so I always like to think, and we talk about this at a board level, that we need to really focus on being proactive instead of reactive. And so I think that means a lot of different things for us. I think it means that we have to continue to invest in the next generation of auctioneers. We've got to embrace the technology, even though it may be uncomfortable at times, right? I always say, let's get out of our box a little bit and let's challenge some things, maybe challenge status quo a little bit, and then advocate for policies that support our profession. I think if we foster, like continue to foster these things and lean in a little bit to these challenges and these changes in technology and innovation, that's really going to change the culture of our industry and really help us continue to grow as we go forward.
Ditto, but also I think the real pivotal thing is what Morgan said, which is we're at this spot in many cases because of the pandemic. I hate to say that, but where tradition and technology are head on, in some cases crossing, and in some cases butting heads, and in some cases coming alongside of each other. As an association, like it's paramount that we recognize that and both embrace the technology, but embrace the tradition too. And we can't forego one for the other. And we've got to understand that. And we've got to make sure that we continue to use the four cornerstones: promotion, advocacy, community, and education, to ensure that we're encompassing both tradition and technology in a way that is beneficial for the growth and the promotion of our profession and industry. And that's not easy. I say this a lot, which is we've got to move the needle, right? And sometimes moving the needle means we're going to do things wrong, but by doing things wrong, we figured out like that's not the right way. But by maintaining status quo and not moving the needle, like we're not going to ever innovate or change. And so it's a paramount for us as an organization and as members and as a board that we try to move the needle. And sometimes we're going to get it right and it's going to be really awesome. And sometimes we're going to get it wrong and it's going to really suck. But by moving the needle, we actually are going to make progress. And so I think that's the big thing, is understand that technology is here. It's not going away. I mean, if there's anything the pandemic taught us, but that the appeal and the value of the live auction, the live auctioneer, it is not going away either. It's not an either or equation here. It's a all equation.
So moving the needle technology-wise, I know you're a big advocate, John, for artificial intelligence, AI. Is that the technology you're referencing, or what technology is out there?
I think that's a piece of it. I think there's so many pieces of technology. Artificial intelligence, for sure. That's something that current modern companies are using every day in their businesses. And if you're not, you're already behind by years, literally. Some different technologies that are used in other spaces, blockchain technologies, NFTs, things like that, that have abilities to create more efficient processes for auction companies. I think it's important to be aware of those technologies. And even as simple as technologies and how do we reach the member as we think about, hey, the NAA has just over 2,900 members, right? Well, it's only about 600 or 700 of them actually engage in attending an event. Well, that means 70% are unengaged. How do we engage them? Are there ways to even use technology to do that and to build the pool, make the pool bigger of engaged membership. And so I think it's all of those things. It's not just this one magic silver bullet of, oh yeah, if we just do AI, like we're going to be saved. Like, I don't think that's the case.
In my last question, I asked about the challenges ahead. And one of the challenges on some auctioneers' minds is the National Association of Realtors, or NAR settlement, that hit front page news all across the country earlier this year. What effects is this having on the auction industry? And Morgan, you can hit this one first.
We sell a lot of farm and ranch real estate at auction primarily. I think the NAR settlement, obviously, it's reshaping the broader real estate industry. It's going to have some effects, obviously, on our industry as well. I think that as it affects traditional real estate practices, it does raise some important questions, right? About transparency, about commissions, how we communicate value to our consumers. And so I think for the auction industry, really, it's just going to underscore the fact that we need to always be so clear and clearly articulate the unique benefits of auctions, right? So we all know that auctions, we're able to achieve fair market value. We're able to have competitive bidding, which is transparent. We're able to have efficiency in the auction process. But I think a lot of that comes for us. We have an opportunity as auction professionals and in the auction industry to educate the public. And so I think auctions are really going to see a lot of opportunity with this NAR settlement, with this change, because as we know, auctions are fast, fun, transparent, but I think transparency is really the huge key in that, right? That's where this all stemmed from in the beginning, that we weren't being transparent enough with our consumers. The auction industry is exactly, whether it's a reserve auction, whether it's an absolute auction, you have the ability as a seller to control somewhat of the environment, right? Do I want to set a reserve and not let my property go for less than X? Okay, you have the opportunity to do that. But through a competitive bidding environment, it's going to bring fair market value. You're going to see the people, maybe physically if you conduct live auctions like we do, or you're going to have them registered online in a live online auction. Mm-hmm. You get to see the process. And I think that transparency is really what's going to benefit the auction industry with this settlement coming forward. But I think it leaves us a huge opportunity as auction professionals to continue to educate the public about why auctions should be their first choice.
I agree. Can I say ditto again? But Morgan's so well spoken. And so the settlement, it's encompassing. It really gets to the idea of compensation and representation. And in most real estate auction transactions, right, compensation is through a buyer's premium. That's very transparent. Like everybody knows who's getting paid and how much, and brokers register with a broker registration form that very much spells out compensation and all of those things. So I think commission structures are a big thing that we have to continue to be mindful of and adapt to make sure that we are being transparent with how we're presenting commissions and structuring commissions. Who's representing the buyer, who's representing the seller. Agency becomes a really big thing in this agreement because it talks about that agency. And so often I think auctioneers are like, I represent the seller, and dear buyer, come on, we want you to participate. But there has to be this understanding of who do you actually represent, and having these agreements that buyers enter into or don't enter into regarding representation at your auctions, I think becomes important. I think there's an opportunity here because as the traditional real estate industry adapts to this ruling, there's all this education that's going on about this ruling. I think this is an opportunity for the auction profession as a whole to insert themselves as, hey, we already have a really transparent process over here that you may want to consider and understand the benefits of this transparent process that may help you, the traditional real estate industry, navigate through what that process normally would look like for you. And so I think that there could be an opportunity as you think about us with the promotion, advocacy, community, and education. Like, how does this work on the advocacy side or the education side or the promotion side? So I think those are opportunities. I also think we need to be aware of how we co-op with real estate professionals, right? Like traditionally, hey, fill out this broker registration form and you're good to go. That might not fly under these new rules and regulations that traditional real estate agents are going to be subjected to, or at least members of NAR and MLSs, right? we may have to relook at, okay, how are we documenting that they are actually representing this client? Like a emailed or faxed form to your office may not cut it. So I think there's some opportunities there, but really it comes down to, hey, the auction profession and the auction industry is super transparent. It's fun. It's open. It's accessible in a world that is very much seems like it is often like unfair, and I don't know how decisions are being made. And so I think this is truly an opportunity there that if you're selling real estate at auction, you've got to get on board. And I think this is more grassroots than it is. The National Auction Association can do things, sure, but to really move this needle, like, I think it's got to start both at the top and the bottom, right? We have all got to come together in this issue. And there are threats. In fact, later today, Morgan and myself and the executive committee are going to have a conversation about some threats that are coming out of this settlement. There's businesses that are being formed by traditional real estate companies to try and address this, to make their process look more like an auction and less like a traditional real estate listing. That may pose threats to us as a profession and an industry, right? We've got to be aware of that also as the traditional real estate industry adapts to this ruling, like what innovation may come out of that, right? Because as needles move, right, in this case, maybe good or bad, right? Innovation happens. And so there may be some innovations that come out of the traditional real estate industry that impact us in maybe a negative way. So I think we have to be aware of that also.
John, you just brought up how raising public knowledge of auctions is a key point in helping bring auctions to the center of this NAR settlement. I've only been in this industry since June of last year, and I've seen growth in NAA's Next Gen program thanks to the raising of public knowledge of auctions. That's been the centerpiece of the growth. How do we continue to attract new talent and grow the next generation of auction professionals? John, you can go ahead with this one.
I get to steal Morgan's thunder. This is fun. I think there's a couple of different ways, many more than a couple even. First is realizing and understanding this next generation, or I'm not even gonna say the next generation, like a couple generations down. So you get into like the early teens, which we're saying like with IJAC and so the International Junior Auction Championship. They're that youth group, I don't know the bottom age, but up to 18, I believe, but
12 to 18.
12 to 18, right? Like we're starting to see kids that are coming in there. Like you look at the champion this year. He went and learned everything about how to be an auctioneer by watching YouTube, right? Well, okay. We probably should be hanging out on YouTube then, if that's where these kids are going to watch, right? I have a 2-year-old at home. I mean, I think there's no secret there. And her ability to watch something on TV and memorize it and then mimic it back is amazing. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure that applies to the auction profession. So I think there's one way. Like, how do we stand out there and hang out there? Because that's where the kids are hanging out. As they become older, though, and Morgan piloted this in Oklahoma and really was a champion of this, and I'll let her talk more about this, with this idea of partnering with organizations such as FFA to create opportunities for youth pre-18 to have opportunities to be exposed, but also to be mentored and grow within the profession. And that's super important, right? We also see this we're in the process as the two, and most members know because you all received an email today on August 29th about this, which is the Boy Scouts of America are launching a merit badge around auctioneering. We also have a partnership with DECA now, the National Auction Association does. And so it's continuing to be in places where these students are and they're like exploring their careers. Like, why wouldn't auction be part of that conversation? But more so than that, I think there's a gap, and I know this is a Morgan passion, and I am wholeheartedly behind this, is there's this gap between 18 and I'm going to say like late 20s, early 30s, where you're not quite established, but you're still really dang good. And I can name names, right? I'm sure we all can think of, my gosh, that person is like really going to be a future leader. And they flounder about for 5 to 10 years. And so I think there's opportunity within that range also to, hey, how do we help you become a better leader? How do we help you become a better business person? How do we help you become a business person? Maybe full stop, right? Like, hey, you have a beautiful chant and a beautiful opportunity ahead of you, but hey, there's a lot more to this than just you being a wonderful bid caller. And so helping with that, I think also gets that youth element moving and rolling. So, and Morgan can talk way more on this because she not only lives and breathes it, but she's at the grassroots of this.
Hit it, Morgan.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's no secret. This is like where my biggest passion lies, right, with our next generation and how do we educate them. And I think it really comes from me not knowing about the auction industry, like nothing about the auction industry other than going to some livestock sales growing up, but really not understanding the full capacity of the industry. And I was in FFA growing up, but never were auctions presented to me as an option for a viable career. It wasn't until after I graduated from college that I was like, wait, this is fun and this is interesting. And there are so many different sectors of our industry, even if you have never have a desire to be behind the microphone, which initially when I went to auction school, that wasn't my desire. And then I get there and I'm like, wow, like you can do all these different things. I had no idea. And so I think that's really where my passion comes from is, okay, how can we educate our next generation? And as to John's point, how can we educate the next earlier generations of where they have an opportunity to really see a future in auctions and in the auction industry? And I think as we do that, we're not only educating them about a potential career path, we're educating about the auction method of marketing, which is important because one, they'll have an innate knowledge of that, but they're going to share that with their family and friends as well. And so John kind of mentioned, I guess I should start by saying like a few years back, the NAF, or the National Auction Foundation, really championed a project partnering with the FFA to create an SAE. So an SAE is a supervised agricultural experience. And if you're not familiar, just think of it as like a capstone project. So that's been great. We've had a few members go through and be really successful and win awards, right, around those projects that they've done. I will say currently we don't really have a way to measure how many kids are doing the SAE. But what we do know is that a lot of the families or the kids that are students that are choosing to do the SAE are already part of auctions. So we were like, how do we get in front of kids that don't know anything about auctions? And we started thinking FFA has another program called a CDE or Career Development Event. Man, it has been years in the making. It has not only been my vision, but the visions of a lot of other people. And we were like, how do we make this happen? We were finally able to make it happen in Oklahoma this past year. And with the help of Justin Kennedy, who finally, I always say he wore him down, but he finally just got him to say, yes, let's just do this. And we were able to do it in Oklahoma. And the response that we saw was so exciting. We had 49 kids show up, maybe 42 actually compete in the contest. I mean, you think about that. That's just Oklahoma in its very first year. And that's really just grassroots outreach of like us saying, hey, you should have some students be in the contest. But what I thought was so exciting about it, not only did we have all of these kids, maybe 3 of them, I think, had ever had any exposure to auctions, like come from auction families. The rest of them, first generation auctioneers, would have been just like me, had no idea that the auction industry really even existed in this capacity. And so that was really cool to see them come from nothing, having no chant, not being engaged at all in the auction industry, and then being able to step on stage in an actual contest where they're dealing with real money, they're dealing with a real live audience, they're selling real items. And that was just so exciting. And then we took 10 to the state, their FFA state convention for the finals, and then crowned a champion. And then we were able to bring Logan Snyder, we were able to bring her to IJAC this year, and she got to compete in IJAC at NAA. So I think this is really going to change the landscape. Justin Kennedy and I are working right now with probably 14, 15 different states on implementing this project, which is so exciting because I think we're going to see this grow around the country. And I think in turn, that's going to affect what we're seeing come through, right, for the NAA and come through our industry as they grow up into the industry. But I think like John mentioned DECA as well, we started an auction marketing campaign challenge. And these kids are marketing brainiacs, right? Like they are just the best of the best in marketing for their age. And what was really cool to see is they didn't have any idea about an auction either. So really, we just were able to give them the sheet of, hey, here's what we're looking for. And it was really cool to see the different approaches that they took. And to John's point of like, hey, like, you know, Caleb learned everything he knows on YouTube. Well, I think a lot of these kids probably learned some things about auction on YouTube as well, or different social platforms. So it was just cool to see how they implemented a marketing campaign, knowing nothing about what we do, and then building, hey, this is how we would do an auction. So that was really neat. I think there's some opportunities there as well. But I think it really just comes, how do we grow the next generation of auction professionals? Like, having that hands-on experience and a deeper understanding of our profession, providing educational opportunities where they can see a future in our industry. And I think to John's point, I had mentioned we have this 12 to 18-year-old sector of kids that we call next gen at the NAA. And then we have a group of really powerful, mindful, just right young professionals. And how do we engage them so that they not only feel valued but heard, and they have some incredible ideas. And I think if we don't utilize that and we don't really tap into them and what they're looking for in association, that could be detrimental to us, I think, as an association, if we don't really utilize them in their brains and their minds, because they work and they think so differently than we do. Um, it's really cool to see the opportunities that they see in our industry as well.
Those young professionals, is that like 19 to 25 or 19 to 30? How is
Yeah,
that
somewhere
split
in
up?
there. I don't know that I have a specific
Sure.
number in mind, but that would be kind of my thought is, okay, we currently serve 12 to 18-year-olds, and then we just, to John's point, just let them kind of flounder about. And then we're going to, oh, now you have enough experience and you're old enough to serve on a committee. Well, why? They have such unique thoughts and just processes now of how they do things. Why wouldn't we utilize that? And so maybe giving them a space to own some particular projects or communities, conversations, or whatever that might look like for them. I don't know that we know what that looks like yet, but I think there's
Sure.
definitely a space there for growth and to serve that sector of our membership.
Great. Attracting talent seems to be on a good path right now. From a broader perspective, how do we triumph in raising general public support of auctions? John, I'll start with you on this one.
I think it starts with something we talk about all the time and have never done, at least as long as I've been around, which is some sort of a grassroots national campaign that truly tells the story of auction to the world. And that's not easy, and it's going to take us all, but I think that's what has to happen, is campaign that shares compelling stories about the true value of auction. I have this conversation with the CEO of the NAA a lot, which is the majority of consumers have no idea that everything that they touch in the world has gone through an auction at some point. Whether that be their cell phone and the broadcast waves, like the radio waves, like that's all sold by auction, right? The raw materials that make up everything in our lives is all sold by auction, down to much more, like within our profession, right? Like the tangible assets, right? Whether it be farmland or real estate, or we sell closed retail facilities, right? Whatever that may, but there's not a thing that is not sold by auction, because it is such an efficient, transparent, fair way to sell products. And that story is just undertold. I think there's an opportunity to focus on the idea of the auction professional as a leader within their communities. If you go back 40 or 50 years, like the auctioneer was in many cases the leader within their local communities. And I think some of that has been lost a little bit for whatever reason. And I don't know how to rekindle that, but I think that we as auction professionals bring this tremendous set of skills and perspective to the world that many people don't have, just because of what we deal with, right? We're dealing with buyers and sellers and unique experiences and unique situations and circumstances. And I think that has a ton of value to our communities. And I think it's super undertapped and underutilized. And I think there's an opportunity there to, at a grassroots level, like, hey, dear auction professionals, get involved in your communities. Go join the chamber, and not just join the chamber, but be active in the chamber, or go join the whatever organization in your communities and be active. And I think that helps put you out there as a leader, because then people will come to you as an expert and go, oh yeah, no, I got this problem. Go talk to Morgan, because she's got the answers. And if she doesn't, she knows the person with the answers. And so I think all of that's a lot, but to move this needle, it's going to take a lot. And it's going to take us all, in true University of Minnesota style, rowing the boat in the correct direction, and all together, right? Because you can't row a boat with one person rowing out of sync with the other. And so we all have to be in sync and headed in the same direction. So I think that is how we start. And it starts small. And we saw that this year. The promotions committee in the NAA hired a videographer, right? That took hours and hours and hours of footage and interviews and conversations at conferences here. Does that start to become the seed of something, right? And start small and, oh, okay, now we can start to build some things out here and build some video out and build some TV out and build some whatever out, radio out from all of this and actually truly build something. I think we're headed in that direction. How's that for a long-winded answer?
It's great. Morgan, how about you?
It's my turn to get to say ditto on this one, right?
Yes.
I think John's right. I think really this is a big project and it's something that's not going to get done in a year or 6 months. So it's going to be a multi-year, multifaceted project. And I think something like John was saying, I think really we triumph by raising public support for auctions. It's really hinges on education and promotion. And a lot of that has to be done at a grassroots level. But I think we can do a better job as auction professionals individually of just highlighting what I was talking about earlier, just the transparency, the efficiency, and the fairness that auctions provide, right? We can do that in our local communities, which is going to help us as a whole. And John was talking about our videographer that came to conference and show. And I think I'm really actually excited to see the footage that comes out of that because I from being around and some of the stories I kind of heard him capturing, I'm really excited to see what's going to come out of that because I think that public awareness campaigns, success stories, real life experiences from auctioneers, but maybe we even get real life experiences from sellers and buyers where auctions have benefited two people at the same auction and get those stories. That's really, I think, where we can maybe help shift public perception. I think about us in the real estate auction business, and so many times I get the question, why would they ever sell this at auction? Why wouldn't they? The finest assets in the world are sold at auction. We have so much opportunity there for education. And I think in Oklahoma, we're a little lucky because a lot of people think auctions first for whatever reason. I mean, that's a huge blessing for us as an auction company that people are just automatically are like, oh yeah, we gotta sell the real estate at auction. In other parts of the country, that's not the case. And in other, regions that we deal in, that's not the case. And they immediately have a negative perception of an auction. But I think to John's point, it really comes from us as individuals at a grassroots level, starting to get more involved in our communities and talking to people and getting to know people, networking with them, and not always pushing our services on people, but letting them know that we're an outlet for them to problem solve. Because that's where we are as auctioneers. We're problem solvers and we're people, right? Or that's who we should be. I just think we have a big opportunity there to shift public perception, not only from an association standpoint, but really, I think as individuals, that's where it's got to start to come together. And like John said, it takes us all, right? We've all got to row the boat in the right direction. I think we have a huge opportunity there that we can capitalize on, but it's going to be a long-term effort.
No football helmet for you to point at and say row the boat.
I have a TC helmet somewhere around here, but fear the frog.
You both have said ditto quite a bit today. You both have been on the same page. It feels like for years now. In fact, in 2022, you both received awards at our annual conference show. Morgan, you received the Volunteer of the Year award. John, you received the President's Award of Distinction. There he's pointing at it. It looks distinct. You both have taken considerable pride in being NAA members. How do we continue to enrich the value of being a member of the NAA? Morgan, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think when we talk about enriching membership, we talk a lot about this at a board level. It really comes down to like member benefits. And what are we providing to our members? And to me, our opportunities really lie in education. That's what NAA is great at: education, professional growth, networking opportunities, advocacy. Those are all things that I think our association does a great job at. I think we can continue to expand our educational offerings. In the past few years, we've done such a good job, I think, of bringing outside speakers, which really brings a true whole nother perspective to our industry and then the way we think and the way we work. And just you look at Digital Marketing Summit and the way it's grown. And we're not only, I think of past years or the years that I've been involved. And you go to educational offerings and you're seeing a lot of the executives there or the owners of the company. And what was really exciting to me this past year, especially at Digital Marketing Summit, was to see so many team members in the room and people I didn't know. And for someone, and I'm not saying everyone, obviously I don't, but for someone that's pretty involved in an association to come into a room and not know half of the people in there,
Sure.
like for me, that's pretty exciting because it means that we're providing some value to members who, to John's point earlier, aren't normally engaged. Or we're providing a value to members who maybe they're like, oh, well, maybe I don't benefit from this, but XYZ on my team would get a great deal of benefit from this. So I think really as we expand our educational offerings and really look at maybe the value that we're bringing to our members and member benefits for them, we have a really cool team training program now that we launched. And so I think for corporations and larger companies to take advantage of that, even smaller companies, when they're bringing someone in that doesn't know anything about the auction industry, like what an opportunity there for them to take advantage of that team training program and really educate quickly their team on how to do specific tasks within our industry. I think as we create more opportunities for members to engage with one another, whether that's in-person events or online communities, we've been seeing a huge, like a lot of traction with our community conversations. And those I think have really taken off and have been really neat because we're able to do those within communities of practice. And so if you're listening and you don't know what I mean by community of practice, it's just if you're in the real estate industry, if you are a young professional, if you specialize in selling XYZ, if you like benefit auctions, if you're in the marketing sector of our industry, like we have conversations for all these professionals to come together and really have some community there. And so sometimes it may be a mastermind, sometimes it may be talking about a specific topic that affects that community practice. I think just creating more opportunities as an association for members to really have that community, because I think John and I both know individually when you feel that community and you feel that network around you, that's really something special that you can't get on your own. And that really comes from being involved in association. And I always say too, we talk about member benefits a lot, but I think as individuals, we've also got to take that first step to say, I want to get involved and I want to maybe broaden my horizons a little bit. And I'm going to take a step to maybe network with some other individuals around the country that are doing what we're doing. And what are we doing? What aren't we doing? What maybe are we doing great? But what could we learn from maybe other auction individuals and maybe some people that aren't even in our industry? But I think as we look as an executive committee or as a board of directors, I think we've really just got to keep listening to our members and adapting to their needs. And that way we can make sure that NAA is a resource that's valuable to everyone. It takes us all to make an association successful. And so I think open-minded as we can be when we're listening to their needs and what they're looking for, whether that be in educational programs or other offerings.
John?
Stickiness, like Taven's like, did he say stickiness? In fact, I just used that word on a phone call this morning with our CEO. We've got to do things that make our association sticky. In that, think if you've ever gotten like
Gum on your shoe.
Yeah, gum on your shoe. Or I was thinking of my sister when she was young, and I was young and not a very bright young man, and I put cockleburrs in her hair, and she had to get her hair cut because it was so sticky. They wouldn't come out. It was so mean. She was chasing me with a dead rat, so I retaliated. But creating things that create stickiness for the members, that they, as much as maybe they would want to leave, like they're stuck because the value that we're providing to them is so overwhelming, right? And I think the piece of that puzzle is getting people plugged into the right places and in the right path. On Tuesday, a couple days ago, I attended the last afternoon of the Benefit Auction Summit. And I had an individual come up to me who's been a member since 2004. And he said, in 2004, I went to Conference and Show. And he says, I was lost. I was like, this thing isn't for me. I'm going to stay a member because it's important for me to be a member of my professional organization. And he says, it wasn't until this year where he attended Benefit Auction Summit. And he goes, oh, this is what this organization is about. It's about community. And he's like, I got so much value out of this. And I think that's one of the pieces of the puzzle is how do we get members plugged into the right community as fast as possible? because now that particular individual is like, oh my gosh, I've got a community now. Like I'm ready to go. And he's been a member for 20 years and floundered about for 20 years. And so I think that's piece of this puzzle. And we see that the board has taken this direction, which is we used to be a three-legged stool: promotion, advocacy, and education. And we didn't even intentionally do community. And now, like, the intentionality of community, it's a four cornerstone now, right? Like promotion, advocacy, community, education. And now we've elevated the cornerstones to the board. So not only is community so important that it's a cornerstone, but it's actually a board seat. And so continuing to be intentional with community, I think, is super important. And it's 2024, y'all, which means it seems like government regulation is coming at us faster than we're going at it. And people are becoming increasingly and understandably disenfranchised with politics and regulation and that. And I think that to create value, we've got to be strong in the advocacy front. And you're starting to see the National Auction Association lean that way again, right? We've hired an advocacy staff member, right? A full-time member that does nothing but advocacy. We've formed a political action committee to help fund our initiatives politically. So that has to be a piece of it. And I think when you start to put all those together and layer on top what we do so well already, which is education, like we just do education so extremely well, is you start to actually build something that's super sticky, because education can only take us so far, right? Especially in 2024, when the next generation, the Calebs of the world, are going to YouTube and learning how to be world-class auctioneers, right? If he's doing that, like who else is doing that to become world-class auction professionals without having to ever plug into an association or an organization, right? So we've got to create things that make it not only compelling to join, but once they get here, they're stuck because it's sticky, right? And I think that's what happens when you get strong leaders. As I look at people that I've served with on the board and task force and committees over the years, it starts to get sticky because you're like, oh my gosh, I need to get to conference and show because I need to see my community. I need to go to this event because if I'm not at that event, I'm going to get called out for not being at that event because my community is going to be like, yo, where you at? But that's built by investing. You've got to take the time to invest, right? Like you as a member. I'm a member of several organizations, and there's some that I'm just not an active member. And it's not a very sticky. It's like, oh, the bill comes every year. And I'm like, gosh, okay. Because I'm just not very active. And so I think some of it is you have to become active. And then once you become active, you're going to find that things become sticky in a good way, not in the way I treated my sister, right? In an actual good way. Right?
Like the powder that gymnasts use. We're keeping ourselves up and able to climb forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of sticky.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Morgan, you didn't have the benefit of teaching yourself auctioneering through YouTube. You did it the old-fashioned way, went to auction school. You had your first auctioneer competition in 2015. By 2019, you were crowned our women's division IAC champion. You showed you can successfully communicate as an auctioneer on stage. Morgan, how will you continue to successfully communicate with auctioneers off stage?
I think as we look at communication, I think it just comes down to being approachable, to listening to our members, trying to be as transparent as possible, and then being responsive when needed. I think I was telling John this story like a while back, but I think about the first year I walked in the conference and show, and I didn't know anyone. I knew our team that I came with, but other than that, didn't have any sort of community, to John's point. Didn't know anyone. And our company philosophy is just kind of like, oh, you get thrown in the deep end and we'll see if you sink or swim, right? So it's on you to go out and find your people and find your community. And for me, I remember walking into the ballroom, like maybe it was the night of the Hall of Fame gala, and I was like, I don't have anywhere to sit. I don't know anyone. It's pretty overwhelming as you come into that community. And I remember thinking, like, you see the leaders of the association at the time, they're all sitting at the head tables, and you're like, wow, I could never go up to them and have a conversation. That just seems scary. And that they weren't, now that I know them, they're not scary people at all, and they're very approachable. But I think for me, it's like, how do you break that barrier of allowing people the opportunity to interact, right? And to, for lack of a better term, just have an open door policy of, hey, yes, we're serving on the board, but I want to encourage members to reach out if they have concerns or they have ideas. feedback about events, like just to be an approachable person that can be responsive and also respectful of their thoughts and opinions. Um, and maybe through direct communication, but also I'm like a huge believer in face-to-face communication. So whether that's at like state conferences or maybe bid calling contests that I'm attending or judging, other industry events, I think by being present and listening to our membership, trying to engage with them at all levels, whether it's their first year at conference and show or any event, or it's their 50th year there, trying to value everyone and just being that person that people know I'm going to be fair regardless of the situation. And I'm going to value their opinion and their thoughts. I don't want someone to come into a situation feeling like they can't communicate with us as a board or as an executive committee that we're automatically going to say no. I want it to be, like I said, open door enough for people to encourage new thoughts and ideas that are out of the box, because maybe that leads us down a path that we haven't thought of or discussed before. Maybe it's something we need to revisit. Just really, I think, comes down for me just trying to be approachable, friendly face, and someone that they feel comfortable talking to about any situation, whether it be their family or professionals.
Fortunately for you, I feel no fear. You don't scare me, Morgan. I can talk to you very easily.
Right.
And I think every other member should feel that way. In a recent issue of The Auctioneer, John, you credited dedication, teamwork, adaptability, and strong focus on results as just some of the attributes that helped you and Graph Auctions achieve success. How do you see these characteristics playing into your priorities for this upcoming year at the helm of the NAA? What will a successful year as president look like to you?
Collaboration. This isn't about me. This isn't even about NAA. This is about the auction profession. Like, how do we make it better? And so a successful year will look that we have everybody in the boat doing their share. I think you heard that in my speech that I gave at the President's Banquet. If you attended the Benefit Auction Summit, I gave a little speech there, which is it takes all of us. And I think success for me is going to be measured by how many bodies do we have engaged trying to move the needle, as opposed to, hey, how can we just deliver and make sure we're giving everything? Like it needs, for me, success looks like everybody's in the boat rowing together in a direction. Not to bring back a football analogy for you. It truly, that's what success looks like to me. Because at the end of the day, if we're an association that just produces all this stuff and hand feeds it to you and spoon feeds it to you, you're never going to learn how to eat with a spoon. And I think it's important that if we're going to truly grow the industry and the profession, we have to grow and teach and help and empower people to be leaders. And to do that, we have to come alongside of them. We have to encourage them. We have to let them know they're valued and important. I don't care how big or how tiny you think or you are. Like, every voice matters. And that to me is super, super important to move the needle, because we can't do a national marketing campaign without that. We can't be effective without advocacy, without everybody being on board. We can't grow future leaders if it's just Morgan and myself trying to grow future leaders. That doesn't work. Like, we need to ensure that we're doing things together with, I'm going to say complete buy-in, but knowing that's never the case. Like, you always have detractors in the world. But that we're all headed in the same direction, but that direction is cast for people, right? And that we're just not, oh yeah, we're in a boat and we're all together, woo! But it's like, oh no, we're in a boat and we're headed to that landmass over there. And once we get there, we're going to do this thing. And the way we're going to get there is by us all doing this thing. That's what success for me looks like, is engaging and activating the membership. That in a world that it seems like people are increasingly deactivating themselves and de-engaging from things in life. That sounds really fluffy. I know. It is my conviction. Like, I think about John F. Kennedy a little bit, and don't ask me what I can do for you. What can you do for me? Like, we've all got to get in this. And then I think about Abraham Lincoln a little bit and his idea of, hey, I need to surround myself with my rivals because I'm better because of it when I do that, And this whole idea of, hey, if everybody in this boat thinks the same and does this, we are not actually going to be better. We're going to be the same. And so the idea that we have to, everybody, and just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean we can't actually make something better. In fact, we probably will make something better if I don't agree with you, because we'll actually get to a better spot. Those two pieces of the puzzle come to me, which is we've got to activate them all.
Sure.
Whether I like you or you not, which there's very few people in the world I don't like, but we've all got to have constructive work together to accomplish the mission, especially in 2024. It's hard to measure that, though, as a data guy, right? Like, how do you measure that? I don't know what that looks like. But in my brain, I think that if you can accomplish, or we can accomplish that, or if I can accomplish that, whatever the word is there, right? There's probably less membership turnover. There's hopefully membership growth. There's hopefully, there's just not 700 members that are engaged. There's 800 members that are engaged, or 900 members that are engaged, right? And it starts to mushroom on itself slowly. This is not a what's my pet project for the year thing, because I don't believe in those things. If you're going to truly do visionary, innovative things, Morgan said it earlier, it's going to take 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? For some things to pay off. But it takes us all. How's that for a crazy thing?
It's sticky. I'll think about it. Yeah, it's good. The last thing I'd like to hit you with before the little get to know you game that I've devised is our education cornerstone, which you have both brought up a plethora of times in this podcast. It's an integral portion of what the NAA offers. How do you foresee the NAA continuing to develop an industry-leading educational curriculum? And John, we can start with you here.
This is easy. We do education amazingly. But how do we continue? We continue to innovate. Right now, we're rewriting the auction marketing management designation, and we're rewriting it in a way that it used to be 100 slides, and now it's going to be like 25 slides, right? And you're like, what the heck does that mean? No, it's 3 days, and you're going to get 25 slides over 3 days. What the heck are you going to teach? No, we're trying to develop this to be like this really cool, bend your brain curriculum. So continuing to think that way, like how do we create modern education over and over and over and over and try new things, and maybe it'll suck and fail, but at least we tried it. It's bringing speakers. They're like, what the heck is he doing? Like, it's bringing outside speakers. Like this person just won the American Marketing Association Book of the Year. The Digital Marketing Summit Task Force is interviewing her to speak at Digital Marketing Summit here in February. It's continuing to do things like this. Oh, hey, look at this person that has nothing to do with the auction industry, but writes this amazing book on using behavioral science and marketing. Hey, could you come speak at our summit? So engaging outside experts, Morgan touched on that earlier, right? Like bringing them in, getting them involved. Like when we find these things, it doesn't just have to be, hey, Morgan, come talk to me about why real estate auctions are great in Oklahoma. That's awesome. But hey, Nancy Harhut, please come talk to us about behavioral science and marketing. Bend my brain a little bit. And I think that helps. The idea of the team training, right? That's got 25 modules now in team training. Like the continued efforts around, hey, it's more than just educating you, the member. It's about educating you and all of your team. And how do we engage your entire team and make sure that you're receiving premier education? The other piece of the puzzle is the board really worked hard on this and has over the years, which is traditionally our education has topped out at some point, and you get to be the spot that Morgan and myself and others like us are in our careers. And you go, yeah, really the only reason I come to these events is for the networking. I don't really care about the rest of the stuff, right? Because I don't get much out of the classroom anymore. I think it's paramount that we continue to explore things like the executive symposium, where we're like, hey, let's bring all the executives into a room, 50 or 75 of you, and we're going to give you like world-class education and world-class community. And I think the continued emphasis on that, hey, just because you're a 30-year veteran in this industry doesn't mean you don't want to learn. And so we have to continue to step up and understand. I think the whole idea of education, there's opportunity here, right? Because you come out of auction school, right? In fact, my diploma is laying on my desk, right? Like there it is. You come out of auction school, and if you don't have the luxury, I had a luxury, right? Like I came out of auction school, and I'm like, hey, Mike and Jan, like, I'm coming home. They're like, great, auctions on Saturday. See you there. I get it. Like I had an unfair step up in the world in that regard. But for those professionals that don't, like, okay, now what do you do? Oh yeah, come to the NAA. Go attend a conference and show. Go. But now we've got like, hey, go do team training. Hey, in a couple of years, maybe go do CAI. Hey, maybe there's some opportunities in between there, right? Like between auction school and like your first auction. I think about our company. It was founded in 1959. And if you talk to Dwayne, December of 59, and if you talk to Dwayne in 1960, we did one auction. And I don't think that's far off from what happens today either, which is you come out of auction school and you go, yeah, I'm ready. And you do one auction. And maybe the next year you do two. And maybe the next year you die out of the business. Like you bomb out because I can't make a living doing one auction and then two. So I think there's opportunity there. Like, how do we help you in that first year do 5 auctions instead of 1 and 10 in the next year or 15 or whatever the magic number is, right? And provide the education and the opportunities and the networking and the community that you can actually succeed in this industry instead of just bombing out after 1 year of, you go to auction school and you're super excited and then it's hard to book auctions. It just is. That's the reality of the world. And can we help you succeed there better? I think there's opportunity there too.
Morgan, did you go to your parents' dental practice after auction school and help them with an auction or not?
Well, not yet. I guess still an opportunity there eventually, right?
There must be. I was in the dentist's office this morning, and there's plenty of items in their assets.
There are. I mean, you can plot that whole place for sure.
He pulled the pliers out. I'm like, I would wish you didn't.
Pliers. Like they don't call them that.
I feel like they call them something else, but I called them a plier when he went in there and took it out of my mouth and replaced it with a different object.
No, I could regurgitate what John said just now. We've said it a million times on the podcast so far, but the NAA's commitment to education is one of its greatest strengths, right? We know that. We do that well. But I think just continuing, like John said, to develop curriculum that is going to challenge our members and help them think so that they're able to stay ahead of maybe emerging trends or technologies. Just continue updating our curriculum so that it fits the diverse needs of all of our membership. But I think just being able to invite members to take advantage of opportunities like the team training or use those for their company as tools and have those at their disposal, I think that's huge. Just expanding our offerings to maybe include more specialized trainings. So like you take Digital Marketing Summit, or John's talking about the rewrite of AMM, which I think is so cool. You know, he said, yeah, we're going to take 100 slides, we're going to make them 25. Well, what do you do? What does that look like? It means you're doing more. Hopefully, you're getting more hands-on experience in the moment. You're not just learning and like sitting there and you're getting all this information poured at you. You're actually getting to utilize it in the classroom, which is something I thought was so cool about AMM. And it sounds like you're going to get to do even more of that going forward. So I think as we incorporate those things, whether we're incorporating them in other communities of practice as well, and in those designations where maybe you're getting a little bit more hands-on training, getting your hands dirty a little bit, and learning from some people that are outside of our industry, but that are forward thinkers and really great at what they do. I think that's how we continue to ensure that we're doing the best for our membership.
Okay. Before we get into this little get to know you game I've made, did either one of you have anything else you wanted to bring up, talk about, anything about the state of the industry?
I'm just going to say, start doing. If you're a member or even not a member, like plug in and do. Because we only become better with actual doers. When we send out a survey and we ask you how you feel about this thing, and we send out 700 of them and only 5 of you reply, then we're going to do what we think is best, right? If you truly want a better profession, a better industry, a better association, it takes us all. And that means doing. And I think when you start doing, you're going to find that there's this huge community that's ready to just give you a big bear hug and say, let's go. Yeah, I don't agree with you, Taven, on that idea. Or I don't agree that TCU is a good football team. But I'm happy to have that conversation because at the end of the day, we both agree that college football is amazing. And we'll just agree on that and go forward, right? It's totally okay. And I think if I can leave you with one thing, it's just go do. And be seen, be heard, and just do.
I think I'm going to tap into that just a little bit and just say that I think maybe in years past, there's been a perception, or maybe not, maybe just that communication isn't as open. And I think that's something that I'm going to speak for John here a little bit and say that we're really hope that we hear from our membership. To his point, tell us all the things you like, don't like. I'm not saying call us just to complain, but like constructively, if there are things that we can be doing better, or things that you see that there's a gap in programs or education that we're not offering, or maybe it doesn't even have to do with education, community, just in community that we're missing out on, we want to hear about those things. And so, just to my point earlier, being approachable and like being an open mind, I want people to know that we're trying to be inclusive of all ideas and opinions. And you're not going to hurt our feelings by coming to us and saying, hey, we need to do this, or we don't need to be doing this. Just let us have it. Like, it's better than us not hearing from membership at all. We want to be the board that you're able to come and talk to and share your concerns, or maybe you want to share some triumphs with us too. We'd love to hear that. But I think just for me, knowing our membership can approach us at any time, and if we can, like John's point, if we can hear from you, that helps us move forward. And if not, we're going to, as a board, do what we think is best for the association. So if you want to share, and know that we're approachable and we genuinely want to hear your opinions.
I saw a board member the other day, and she served on many boards outside of the NAA. And she said, you know what the coolest thing about this board is? The current director. She said, it is so laid back and so approachable. She says, I can walk up to you, John, and crack a joke or say something about football or whatever, and know that you're going to laugh and engage, and we're going to have a conversation. And she says, it is so refreshing. And I think know that about the board. Like, we sit in that room, there's 14 or 15 of us, and we truly all get along, but have divergent views and divergent opinions. But at the end of the day, have one goal, which is to make our profession and our association the best it can be. And engage with us. We want that things. And sometimes you're going to come up to us. Somebody the other day came up to me and said, hey, you know what? ABC sucks. And I said, you know what? I'm going to cover my name tag for a second. You're absolutely right. That sucks. And I don't disagree with you. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get authentic realness back. You're not going to be like, oh, great point, and blah, blah. That's not what you're going to get. You're going to get authentic. That's not a word. Authenticity back. There you go. Thank you.
Bingo.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know you both as auction professionals, and you both know me primarily as the robustly charming communications coordinator here at the NAA. But I want our members to know you as more than just auction professionals. So the game I have for us today is something I am calling 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's a working title, but I've said it out loud, so I guess that's locked in as the title. So it is in fact called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Basically, I have 5 questions for you. You'll give me 5 answers for the first one, 4 for the second question, 3 for the third, and so on. I have answers for all of these too, so I'll start us off on these questions, and then you guys can just give me your answers. So the first question is in honor of our president, John. His favorite food is hot dogs.
This is true.
And I'm just going to kind of let that stew for a second.
I had 4 yesterday.
What do you want from me there? Do you want me to say congrats? What do you want?
You should say, why didn't you have 6?
Okay. All right. So this first question is, I need your top 5 hot dog toppings. So I'll give you mine. My top 5 are caramelized onions, ketchup, stone ground mustard, extra sharp cheddar. It's got to be the extra. Got to be extra sharp cheddar. And I'm cheating a little bit here because it's not necessarily a topping, but a brioche bun is a game changer on a hot dog. Ooh. And I know that's a little cheating because it's not a topping, but I made the game. So there you go. Morgan, you can go ahead and go first because I know John's going to want his soapbox here for this.
For me, it's going to be ketchup and mustard together, chili, cheese, and maybe some like pickled jalapenos, like the chopped kind. I got a bonus sauerkraut in there, but not on that other combination.
John?
I'm going to cheat.
Please.
Because I think the best hot dog in the world is a Chicago dog.
What's with the big pickle spear? And half tomatoes.
I mean, right? Mustard, onions, pickle relish, a pickle spear, tomato slices. sport peppers, a little celery salt. My wife, Billy Joe, does not like hot dogs necessarily, but she loves a Chicago dog. That might be cheating because that's way more than 5 condiments on a hot dog. But it, it's surprisingly good is is if you bite into a hot dog and you take your Chick-fil-A sauce bottle and you just squirt a little bit on the end where you bit off, and then you just kind of like continue to repeat that process as you eat the hot dog. It's as I have Chick-fil-A sauce on my desk, it's surprisingly good. So Chick-fil-A sauce is underrated on hot dogs. Definitely underrated.
Well,
Do you
who
want to
can
know the
rate
best
that?
way to cook a hot dog?
Yes.
You should spiral it.
Okay.
So
Grilled?
grill it. So take a skewer, put it through your hot dog, and then take a knife and cut diagonally around the hot dog, and it will turn into a long spiral, like almost a slinky. And you put that on the grill. It is the best way to eat a hot dog in the world because now you've created crevices, right, for your condiments to flow into, but you've also created additional crispy edges in your hot dog.
If you didn't learn anything today, know
That's
that.
right. That's right. And you would think like I also like Kraft macaroni and cheese out of the box, but I also like to go to eat nice restaurants too. Like I am a bit of a foodie in addition to. You want the craziest thing I've ever had on a hot dog?
Okay.
It was in a restaurant in Pittsburgh, a hot dog restaurant, and they brought me a nice dozen hot dogs in a pyramid with a firecracker in the middle, like a sparkler. And they lit the sparkler, and the sparkle is going, and the hot dogs are all there. And then the buns, like we're in a pyramid kind of around a cone shape. And then when you open the cone up to start putting your hot dogs, they are filled with gummy bears. And so then you put gummy bears. It was so good, so good. So
Why?
good.
Why was it good?
First of all, a dozen hot dogs.
Please, thank you.
Can we
Yeah,
go
You
back to
ordered
that?
a dozen hot dogs?
yeah. Why not?
Because it's a dozen hot dogs and you're one person?
So
He had
Okay.
a
I
dozen
thought-
tummy
I
aches
thought that was
after.
snack.
foolproof.
I ate 4 yesterday as a snack. How do you see your? Oh, here you go. Y'all can't see this photo. For those of you listening, it's funny you asked this question. I was given a 30-minute challenge at this restaurant. That is me eating a 22-inch hot dog in 15 minutes. Plus,
was
I
the
drank
time?
that beer. What's that?
What was the time you had to do it in?
30 minutes.
And you did it in half. That makes sense.
Yeah. And most of the time I was actually sitting there, and to prove I did it, there's me with the empty plate. And of course, I had a shirt on that day that said, "What up, dog?" There's many people in this industry that have witnessed that encounter.
Mhm.
But I sat there and I was talking most of it. And then they're like, "Hey, dude, you're running out of time." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, let me eat this hot dog quick." Yeah. No
3
problem.
bites. He was done.
All right.
Yeah, it's no problem at all. So
Well, we've all got our thing.
hot dogs. are
And my thing is I'm an avid Letterboxd user. It's an app where you can log movies and just write reviews for them. And as of today, actually, I have 1,100 written reviews. So I'm required. A portion of Letterboxd is on your main page. You can post your top 4 movies. So I feel like I'm required by law, as someone with 1,100 written reviews, to ask you here your top 4 movies of all time. And I'll go first here. My top 4 movies of all time are Ratatouille, Superbad, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and Back to the Future. Those are my top 4 all time. Morgan, please hit me with your top 4.
Hey, Sister Act 2. We'll watch it anytime it's on TV.
Love that.
Twister, not the new one, the original one.
Okay.
Top Gun Maverick, and The Holiday.
Okay. A little bit of action, a little romance in there. Love that. John?
I have a confession. I don't think I've watched 4 movies in my entire life.
Oh, okay. I wasn't prepared for this. Okay.
No, I have one movie that is my all-time favorite.
Okay.
The only movie he's ever watched.
No, I mean, is this? I watched Divergent the other couple weeks ago with my nephew, which was really good. But I think it's hard to say your all-time 4 when you've only probably watched 10 movies in your entire life. But With Honors is by far the most moving. I've watched it probably 20 times in my life. Cry every time. With Honors. But I don't have any more because I'm sorry. I just don't watch movies.
That's okay. That's fine.
Is that
I'm
crazy?
over it.
They're like, he talked about hot dogs for 22 minutes. We get the movies and he's got one.
Okay. All right. And that's fine. Sister Act 2, Morgan, what's wrong with the first
Yeah.
one?
The first one's fantastic. You said top 4 of all time, so it
And
would be
Sister
up
Act 2
there.
is just, it is the better.
I just like it better.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's just the music for me. You know, that's my
Okay.
background. I enjoy the music.
Love that. Speaking of music, my dad instilled in me from an early age that most musicians are worth more than just their singles. Some of the best songs of all time never make it to radio. I carry that with me to this day, where I have to listen to an album in its entirety to really learn an artist. My music taste is all over the place because of this. So with all that being said, what are your top 3 songs that you cannot get enough of today? At this moment, not all time, today. My top 3 right now are Oh Honey by Delegation, Bliss by Mariah Carey from her 1999 Heartbreaker album, and
Really?
Sculptures of Anything Goes by Arctic Monkeys. Those are my top 3 right now. Morgan?
Wait.
Oh.
We have to go back to your number
Yeah,
2
go
for
ahead.
a second.
Your number 2 answer.
Yeah, Bliss by Mariah Carey. What's up?
Yeah. So where did your exposure to that song come from? As a young man,
Uh-huh.
right, like Mariah Carey is maybe a bit out of your generation.
Bliss by Mariah Carey. The reason I have that song is because I just recently did her entire discography just out of pure wanting to know, and that's where that's at.
You're blowing my brain right now.
Sorry.
I blew yours with the last question. Oh, so, yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
John, what are your top 3 songs right now?
Can I give you 4?
Okay.
Number 1 all time is my favorite musician in the world, Whitney Houston. I Want to Dance with Someone.
Strong pick.
All time. Billy Joe knows that there's 3 women in my life, and it's Billy Joe, Anna Claire, and Whitney Houston. And just that's in that order. Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. Should Have Been a Cowboy by Toby Keith. Awesome country anthem, right? Should Have Been a Cowboy by Toby Keith. Just some of those lyrics in there, like they really hit home for me. Morgan will appreciate this one. Cody Johnson's song Human, which is not as much of a heralded song as his, but talks about how he's been good at burning bridges and striking matches and all of these things, and just how being a human, you don't quite always get it right, and that's okay. Definitely top 3. And I'm going to give you a 4th, which is probably my favorite anthem in the world, which is Dust on the Bottle by David Lee Murphy.
A good one.
Right? How'd you like that? So, I mean, I might not have top 4 songs, but I can give you, or movies, but I can give you 4 songs. Really
Good. Morgan, how about you?
You said right now, because I couldn't
Mhm.
possibly give you my top 3 of all time.
No, I couldn't either.
Way too hard. Right now, I'm gonna go Nobody by Casting Crowns.
Okay.
I'm gonna go That's Texas, Cody Johnson.
Okay.
And I think I'll go Brother, Need to Breathe.
It's
Morgan-
interesting, like our
yeah.
our 3 sets of songs, like very different, like energy levels in those songs. Like, you know what I mean? Like from 3 different favorite people. It was just interesting.
Have you ever heard Ben Rector's version of I Want to Dance with Somebody?
It probably does a disservice.
He does all the parts and the music, like everything. It's him doing all the things.
Really?
Fantastic.
That doesn't sound like a disservice to me, John.
No. Ben Richter?
Ben Rector, R-E-C-T-O-R.
Not gonna. YouTube Music opening up next.
Morgan, you brought up the fact that you were part of the collective effort in hosting the inaugural FFA Auctioneering Career Development Event Finals as part of the Oklahoma State FFA Convention. Nonprofits mean a lot to me. They foster civic engagement, drive economic growth, simply strengthen the fabric of our communities, both a national and local scale. The NAA is a nonprofit, so excluding the NAA, what are 2 nonprofit organizations that hold a special place in your heart? And I'll go first here. Kansas Wildlife Federation. It helps with the conservation of native plants, native wildlife, including monarch butterflies, Big fan for my home state here. And then the Special Olympics mean a lot to me because I think sports should be for everyone, and I feel as though everyone should feel the transformative power and joy of sport. So those two mean a lot to me. John, how about you?
So too, American Red Cross. Not American Red Cross, American Heart Association. I'm sorry. I was thinking about red and blood and things like that.
Okay. Sure.
My grandfather passed away at 68 years old from a massive heart attack, and that had a tremendous impact on my life in a whole host of different ways. And so because of that, I have some issues with my heart also. Were passed down to me, right? And so that's very, very, like, figuring out that piece of the puzzle is important to me. When he gets to number 2, I'm more broad. I can't name a specific, but if a youth, and maybe I'm going to say FFA, but if a youth walks in the front door of our office or over here and comes to my office and says, "Hey, I'm selling this thing for school, and it's a $25 card for whatever," and I'm like, "Here, can I buy 50 of them?" Megan in our office, her son plays football, and they're selling $25 gift cards, and I bought 10 of them, 250 of them. And his buddy, Noah, I'm friends with his parents, he texts me like an hour later, and he says, all he says in the text, I've never received a text from him in his life before. He's 14 years old. He must have got his phone number from, I don't know from where, but anyways, he says, "This is a better link to donate." And it's a donation link to his, right? And I said, "Haha, I bet it is." And he's, "Yeah, probably." I'm like, "Boom, done. $250 headed your way to help you." And he writes back, "Geez, buddy. Well, thanks a lot." And I think the impact on people, youth, of unimaginable to them generosity makes a lasting difference on them that goes beyond the $250. Or FFA, Nikki's daughter's an FFA, and every year we buy the goat, and every year the auctioneer, who's a friend of mine, makes sure that damn goat brings $3,000. And Nikki's daughter then comes in and brings a card and thanks and a picture. We have a whole wall of goats in our conference room. And then this year her niece is involved, and so we buy her niece's goat. Just seeing that young generation be impacted when you can financially give to whatever their nonprofit is that makes a difference in their lives, whether that be football or FFA or whatever it is. I think that for me is a super important piece, because it not only does it help that nonprofit, whatever that nonprofit might be, but I think, helps that youth in a way that's immeasurable with, oh, there's generosity. I have to come and thank somebody. Like it just, I don't think you can measure the impact of that. And that's not to say like all these other nonprofits aren't noble and make a difference in the world. But I think when you can couple that with youth, like I think you can move the needle in ways that we can't measure, because we don't know when Lainey, I'm going to use Lainey as an example, in 15 years, when she's 20 something, 27, whatever, like what impact that's had on her. And Morgan, you know this, Taven, I don't know if you know this, but right, I think when you can do uncommon generosity to complete strangers, you can make an unknown difference in the world. And Morgan knows what I'm like. If you go out to eat with me, I'm generally going to leave a tip that is considered ridiculous. The number of times I've watched a waitress or a waiter not be able to come back to the table because they're crying somewhere. I think you can be, like, nonprofits are super important, obviously, but I think generosity and the idea of true generosity for the sake of generosity is as noble, or maybe even more, especially when done to complete strangers. But please donate to the foundation. We would appreciate your contributions.
Fair.
How's that?
Shameless plug.
Good plug. Morgan?
I work with a lot of nonprofits, so I feel like a little bit like I'm cheating on my clients here with this answer. So like hopefully none of them hear this. But I think for me, and it kind of goes back to that youth, like investing in our youth and investing in people in general. One of my favorite nonprofits is here locally. So they're out of Grapevine, Texas, and they're called House of Shine. And so they help they have curriculum and programs for like K through 12, and then also adults as well. But a lot of their programs focus on K through 12, and they help kids find their shine. So shine being strengths, hobbies, interests, and irritants, needs, and experiences. And then they take those things and then they like help them understand what those means. And then they help be a catalyst for them to learn how to activate those shine characteristics, right? And like how do they implement and grow it. And so they have craft fairs or a Shark Tank where they're like creating something and then presenting it to a panel of judges, professionals in the community. And they just have this relentless desire to spread shine in the world and to make our, and like kind of to John's point, make our corners of the world a better place because we have the power as individuals to do that. And so like one of their event that I do with them, it's kind of like a Galentine's Day event, but they bring in women really that are kind of local to our community, but that are making big impacts in their communities. And so it's just cool to hear their stories and see how helping, I think something that we don't do a lot is to help kids figure out what they're good at or what they want to do. I think a lot of times we tell them, right? Like you need to be doing X, Y, Z, but we don't explore that a lot with them. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you love? What are you passionate about? And they really plug into that. So I just love that so much. And they're amazing. Their whole team is incredible. So House of Shine will be number one. And then I think number two for me is just going to be, gosh, I could name a lot of different ones, but like just top of mind currently is just our children's advocacy centers. And so really helping kids that don't have a voice, that have been through some really tragic things that no kid should ever go through, helping them find a place and provide someone that can help them understand what they're going through and help them get into a situation that maybe is light years better than what they're currently in, and then providing them the resources. A lot of children's advocacy centers provide resources for life, so they don't age out when they're 18. They get to continue utilizing those resources throughout their entire adulthood as well, which I think is incredible because it's probably something that impacts you, right, for your entire life. So just really passionate about that. And I work with a few of those, so I won't say, but like just community advocacy or children's advocacy centers in general, because I think for kids that don't have a voice or that don't, it's important that we advocate on their behalf.
Yeah, you're both, attacking that next gen. There you go. Love that. Okay, home stretch here. As you can tell by these 5 questions, animals mean a lot to me. Look at it like this. Hot dogs, ratatouille, Arctic monkeys, Kansas wildlife. That one's a stretch at the end there, but we've all encountered animals for better or worse. And I just want to know your funniest encounter you've ever had with an animal. That's it. I'll start. There's a place in Davis, Oklahoma called Arbuckle Wilderness. It's a drive-through zoo, and I was chased by a camel, and it bit my driver's side mirror because I didn't have any more feed to give it, and it did not like that. So that would be my funniest animal encounter, is I've been chased by a camel. Morgan, how about you?
Oh, I'm going to let John go. I'm really trying to rack my brain about this one.
Okay.
I might not have 4 movies, but I have many of these stories. I'm trying to pick which one is the funniest. I'm going to give you my most embarrassing one.
Okay.
How's that?
We love it. We love that.
Right. And it involves an auction even. I'm probably 17 years old, maybe 18. Maybe I'm in my 20s. I don't know. Early in my auction career of my life, which meant this. If for those of you listening that understand estate auctions and personal property auctions, it means that you show up and live auction, like this is pre-internet. I'm not old. You show up at 6 a.m, right? And you schlep all the stuff out of the house onto hay wagons and hay racks and whatever in preparation for the auction. This was a pretty big estate, and we had the plan was sell off the first 2 hay racks and then back them up to the side of the house and load more shit out of the house basement under the hay racks to sell them later. So I always was in my aunt and uncle's business. I was the boat floater because my brother's a state champion, my uncle's a state champion, my cousin's a state champion. So at some point you got enough state champion auctioneers that somebody has to actually run the business a little bit. So I always called myself the boat floater. I could cashier and clerk and sell and move furniture. So it's a rainy day. I'm in the basement of this house And the base, it had like a side door, and this was a true hoarder house. And the auction's going on. The auction started at 9 that morning. And the auction's going on. It's 9:30 in the morning. And I'm reloading this trailer. And I'm down there with a crew of, I don't know, 3 or 4 people. And all of a sudden, I meet a raccoon. And I screamed at the top of my lungs. And the raccoon screamed at the top of its lungs. And we both proceeded to exit the nearest exit, which was the side door of this house, right into the ring of the auction where the auction was going on. And I don't know who made the door first, me or the raccoon, maybe both at the same time, both running out of this house as fast as we could to the entire auction going, oh. And they stopped selling to look at the two of us, the raccoon and me, running out of this house. I'm like, okay. And so embarrassing. 100 and whatever, however many people are there. All, what's going on, John? Me and the raccoon. Me and the raccoon. If you want a part 2, so that's probably my most embarrassing. I was mortified. I have many. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I used to live in a small town. I do live in a small town now, but a smaller town. I knew the postmaster quite well. And she knew I do not like mice. Do not use this as a license to mess with me. But one day I went to the post office and I had a P.O. box. And I opened my P.O. box up and put my hand in to get my mail. And she had a dead mouse laying on top of my mail as I put my hand into the post office box. And I screamed. And you could hear on the post office box, like there on the other side, like you could hear her cackling. I swear.
Was it a real dead mouse?
It was a real dead mouse just laying in my P.O. box. And I'm like, I screamed. And you could just hear her laughing and laughing on the other side. I'm like, oh my goodness. Anyways, those are my 2 stories. I currently have a animal similar to your camel that loves me. Our daughter loves to go to this farm near us every Friday. And there's a llama that when it sees me, smiles, I swear to you, and runs up to the fence and like tries to kiss me every single time we're there.
Got the hots for you.
I know. It doesn't matter like what I'm doing. I walk up to the fence for Anna Claire to pet the llama, and that llama could be on the other side of the pasture and runs over and like tries to get at my face every single time.
I think I'm sure I have others. I just like none of them are like top of mind for me. Maybe I've tried to black them out. I'm not sure. The one that is like most recent, I feel, was we don't do a lot of personal property. We were doing some personal property for an auction for a ranch that we were selling. And so we were in there getting the stuff, loading, all the things. They had a bird. I'm not a bird person. They freak me out. Don't like them. Care nothing about them. It screamed at me the entire time. The entire few days we were in there, I don't think it took a breath. At one point, I'm like, I gotta leave before they come home and their bird's not here. I need a break. I gotta get out of this place. But what's so funny about it is that it was like have full on conversations. And they had this little puppy, and this realtor that we were working with, like co-oping with, she picked up their puppy, and the bird said, "Put the dog down." You're like, what? I've never heard a bird talk like that before. It just said, "Put the dog down." You're like, God. It was bizarre.
I'm leaving at that moment, like deuces.
I'm out on the birds. They freak me out, and that one wore me out for the few days that we were in there. So it's a hard pass for me.
I'm convinced animals know when you're scared of them. Like I have a fear of cats that goes back to some traumatic event when I was young. That's probably a funny story too. I remember in my 20s, I dated this gal that had this cat, and I swear it would know, like when I was alone in the house, that, oh, I need to go torment John. Like it would I'd freak out. I'd be like, get away. It wasn't a mean cat. It just wanted to play or whatever. Like, I'm like, no, gotta go. Got to go. Like, they just know. No cat person here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Neither.
We got to learn how the state of the industry is going, how hot dogs need to be eaten, and, just the ins and outs of our president and vice president here. So thank you, both of you, for this wonderful conversation. Listeners, be sure to follow the National Auction Association on all social media platforms at NAA Auctioneers. That's all I've got for you. Thank you, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Taven, for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Taven. This was fun.